Glad all y'all here. We're gonna do a quick training, and it's gonna be on overcoming resistance. So every vision encounters resistance. Every ministry, every one of us encounters resistance in life and leadership. And there's a couple things you can do to overcome the challenges. So the first is just kind of a mindset thing. And it's really training your mind and even how you communicate with your team and your leaders. And that's seeing resistance and challenges as opportunities for growth. Like, here's a chance for us to get better. Here's a challenge like we've got this challenge. This is an opportunity to become more dependent on God. This is an opportunity to get creative. Or maybe this challenge presents an opportunity to kind of relook at some presuppositions we had about ministry or what it could look like. And a good question I like to ask when I encounter resistance or challenges is like, okay, what's the opportunity here? And sometimes just reframing it that way can be really helpful. Like, okay, what's the opportunity here, God? What are you going to do through this? So that's the first thing. That's just a quick question. The second has to do with defining resistance. Like, what is it? So I want to give you a quick framework you can use that with these three categories of resistance, because the type of resistance often determines the course of action needed to move forward. So the three types of resistance: there's barriers, there's hurdles, and there's gaps. And each of these could be a who or a what. So barriers. Barriers, something you have to work around. Like, barriers are immovable. So you have to figure out, how do we move forward with the barrier in place? So some examples in kind of the college young adult world could be, maybe you're ministering to a place that's more of a commuter college or a community college. So you don't have a place where you go there and you know there's going to be students, like at the University of Texas, where I'm at. Like, if you go on campus, there will be college students there. Often in these other types of campuses, that's not the case. It could be like a university policy. Like, student groups or outside groups can't use any sort of like university grounds. It could be church policies where, hey, ministry needs to happen on the church grounds, like happens in the building. It could be, we've got Sunday school, it's at 8:30 or 9 a.m. No, you can't cancel it. No, you can't move it. Yes, you have to lead it, even though most college and young adults may not be awake at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. But this is the thing, or you can't launch a larger group activity for young adults or college students. A common barrier is budget. Hey, this is your budget. This is what it is. It's usually kind of small. It could be something with leaders, like a leader over you. Maybe there's more of a micromanaging kind of mindset. So those are examples of barriers where these things, hey, you have to work around it. There's barriers. So hurdles are the things that you do have the power to overcome, but it's going to take some work. So maybe it's, you want to start a student group, train up a student to take on some leadership. You want to equip your people and do some outreach on campus. Maybe you need to get approval from a leader at the church to launch some sort of new initiative. Maybe you want to start a leadership group. Those are all hurdles. So you can overcome them, but it's going to take a bit of work. And then there are gaps. So these are things you need to fill in before you're able to move forward. So there's something you want to do. We need to figure this out. But until we have this training or this type of piece in place, or we have some interns or some sort of leader, like, this isn't going to happen until we fill the gap. So example there could be skills you're lacking. Like, we want to establish a disciple-making culture. I'm not sure what that is. All right, well, that's a gap. That's training. That's a skill you can add. I'm not sure, maybe you're not sure how to lead your team well or to equip your leaders. Those are all things that, all right, these are gaps. maybe it's a who, like, hey, until I have someone who can lead worship, we can't launch any sort of young adult college service. So those are just some of those. I'm sure you guys can come up with examples. So the thing is, when you understand and can start labeling, like, here's what the resistance is, it can take some of the power and the confusion out of it. And then once you get some clarity, often then it's easier to move forward. Like for a barrier, like if you don't need to keep investing a bunch of mental and emotional energy into trying to move something that at this time is immovable. So you can just like, all right, this is what it is. It's out of our control. What can we change? What's the opportunity? How do we move forward? For a hurdle, you can start thinking through like, okay, so this is the hurdle we need to get over. Here are some of the next steps. Where is the best place to start? Then you have gaps. You know, hey, we can't move forward until we learn some outreach techniques for the campus, or until we have these interns. And so you either have to pause until you can fill that gap, or hey, this is the gap, let's fill it. Now, depending on what you're doing, one challenge may have multiple kinds of resistance. You may look at it and be like, I've got a barrier, I have a couple hurdles, and like one gap. And then you can look at that and be like, all right, here's the natural next step. Let's start moving forward. So this is a quick framework. It can be really helpful even passing on to students. Like you're meeting with someone and it just seems like, hey, you're trying to move a barrier that isn't going to move. So how can we help you focus on areas where you may have some control? Or maybe you've got a hurdle, you know, like you're talking them through, like, here's how to move forward through this. Or there's a gap. And often as leaders, this is a place where we can step in and fill gaps where it's just like they don't know how to have difficult conversations or to kind of confront someone on something. And that's where you can step in as a leader and it's like, hey, I can come alongside you here. So what's the opportunity? Barriers, hurdles, gaps, quick framework. I have some discussion questions here. So when you think through your ministry, some of your resistance challenges, would you see those falling? Are there things you've been wrestling with where you're just like, okay, well, actually, this may be different than what I was thinking. And then we can just move on to the open coaching conversation. But yeah, I'll just open this up. Thoughts, questions. Yeah, I'd love to hear from y'all.